Okay, so we're going to run through real quick how to fill out a vacant land contract. So a contract on vacant land is not that much different from a traditional as-is contract that you would write, but we're going to go over some of the kind of the slight differences in here. So obviously going through the contract, obviously the name of buyer and seller going to be here at the top. And make sure you have the legal names of the buyer and seller as always. If you import this from the MLS, it'll automatically import the legal description, address, and all that stuff into your contract if you're using Transaction Desk. If you're using Transaction Desk and the land is not listed on the MLS, then you can use the parcel ID number to import all that stuff. But if you wanted to fill it out by hand, obviously this is where you put the address, legal description, and all that good stuff here. So if you end up doing that by hand, just fill it out by hand here. Obviously, purchase price, you're going to want the contact information of the title company. So all this is very similar to a traditional contract. Not much has changed here. As far as deposits are concerned, it looks a little bit different on this contract. But the one that we usually check is will be delivered within 3 days. So 3 days of the date of the effective date of the contract. So when everybody signs a contract, the effective date begins and the 3-day clock begins for you to get that deposit in there. So this is where you would put the deposit amount. Obviously, that deposit amount will depend on the price of the property. It'll also depend on how bad you want the property, so on and so forth. That's a decision that you'll have to make depending on your situation. Sometimes people put additional deposits after a certain period of time, such as after the due diligence period, meaning the inspection period, if you will. Sometimes people will say, hey, I'll put $5,000 down now, but after the end of the inspection period, I'll put an additional $10,000 down, whatever the case may be. And you would fill that in. Most of the time, we'll just keep it simple and just put the initial deposit down there. Very rarely do you have to check this box, because you only have to check this box if the purchase price will be determined on a per unit cost instead of a fixed price, which most of the time you won't run into. So don't worry about that. I did skip over this part. If you are getting financing, obviously you will want to put the dollar financing amount or percentage here. Let's say you're financing 50,000, you would put it in there. Or if you were financing 50% of the purchase price, you would put that in there. Same thing. That's all good. Time for acceptance, similar to a traditional contract. You're going to give them a certain amount of time that you would like a response in. This is not a hard and fast thing. Like if that time runs out, you can't do a deal. It just means that you'd like to hear from them in that period of time. And if you hear from them after that period of time, your buyer's no longer bound by this contract. So, in other words, if, you gave them till tomorrow to answer you, and then the day after that, they answered you, they said, yes, they want to do this contract, but your buyer had already found another property, you could say, well, I no longer, want a contract on your property. I'm out. You pass the deadline. So, most of the time for acceptance, I just give them to the next day, or if you want to give them a few days, you can. Closing date, obviously you're going to put the day that you want to close on the property. So you'll have that there. Financing section, same as a traditional contract. Either they're going to pay cash, which on land deals is most of the time, it's hard to get financing on land or just land. So a lot of times it'll be cash, but if it's not, then you're going to click the financing section. You can give yourself, if you leave this blank, it'll basically go to 30 days. Basically, either you'll have your financing period of up until the closing date or 30 days, whichever comes first. Let's go ahead and just put 30 days here. Buyer will apply for financing within, if you leave it blank, it's 5 days. 5 days is fine. You can put 5 days there. And then it's going to ask you what kind of financing you're getting. So most of the time, if you are getting financing on land, it'll be new financing, but sometimes you can do seller financing, right? So if a seller owns the land free and clear, doesn't own anything on it, you can actually do a loan, through the seller, which actually does happen more often on vacant land than probably anything else, because a lot of people will own that land free and clear. And people know it's kind of hard to get financing on land. So it could be seller financing. And then you just have to negotiate the terms with the seller as to what the interest rate will be, how long the loan will be for, so on and so forth. And that would be something that once you got the terms, the title company could potentially help you write that mortgage and all that stuff up. So that could get signed at closing. But if it's new financing, you'd click here. And tell the amount of the financing or the percentage of the financing that you're getting as far as the loan to value, and just like a regular contract, I would click a fixed rate here, and I would say at the prevailing rate. So just a fixed rate, not exceeding, the prevailing rate. I don't get too specific here because it just gives you a reason to back out. So if you want to get specific, you can, but it just gives you more reason to back out as a buyer, which won't look good to the seller. So once again, you put the amount that you're financing here as the dollar amount or loan to value percentage, and put fixed rate here, and a fixed rate at the prevailing rate based on if neither choice is set. So it's automatically going to go to prevailing rate if you don't fill any of these rates in. So just put fixed rate and then just leave the rest blank, and you should be good to go there. Assignability, if you want it to look good to the seller, you're going to click may not assign. So you cannot assign this contract to somebody else. Now, if for some reason you as a buyer are going to put this property into an LLC. So let's say you put it into your personal name. So today you don't have the LLC formulated, but you want to transfer the property into the name of the LLC at some point, you may say may assign but not be released of liability, because you're going to assign it to your LLC, which you happen to own, and you won't be released of liability for this contract. But if you want to keep it clean, I would just put may not assign. That way the seller doesn't think anything's funky is going on. As far as a type of marketable title, I would click statutory warranty deed for that. This is listing the other matters to which title will be subject. So most of the time you're just going to click that and you should be good. You should be good to go. And so title. So the seller, you're going to want the seller to deliver title to the buyer at seller's expense. And I would say, within 10 days should be sufficient for a title company to get you a title, the title commitment. And so you can see that. Or you can put at least X amount of days before closing. I just put 10 days here. That's fine. And they're going to deliver to you. Click this one, a title insurance commitment. Okay. So by Florida licensed title insurer. So that's the one you click there. Don't worry about that one there. Most of these default here, but if you want to fill in the default days, basically within 10 days, but not know that enclose the bill or written notice to seller of title defects. I would say after receipt of title evidence, buyer will deliver within 10 days. So after the buyer receives a title, they will have 10 days to tell them if there's any problems and on the title that the seller has to try to fix. So 10 days is fine for that. This defaults to 30. So they'll have 30 days to cure anything that you find on title. So if there's like a lien that they didn't know about, that's fine. You can just default it to that. So it already defaulted, but you want to fill it in. Looks a little bit cleaner there. Due diligence period. This is essentially the inspection period. All depends on the deal, and depends on the type of land, right? So, a typical residential lot, you could probably do, inspect a lot quicker, but let's say you have to go to, let's say you didn't know what you could build on it and you wanted to go to the city or the county and run your plans by them, and you need more time to do that. Sometimes, you might need more than 30 days. You might need, a couple months to do that, or 45 days, but if it's just a traditional little residential lot and, you can build a house on it and, your buyer feels confident, then, 30 days should be sufficient. If it's a hot deal by some chance, and you want to put less days, that could be an option, but I don't have a problem with a 30-day due diligence period on that. And let's see. Or if you really want the property, you can always click no due diligence period, but then you have no inspection time. So you can't back out due to that. During this 30-day period, you have the opportunity to basically back out for any reason and get your deposit back. Coming down here, these are just the traditional costs, whoever you're representing. If you're representing the buyer, obviously, if there's a transaction fee, this is where I would put it, transaction fee, to EXP Realty of X amount, or transaction fee of, $395 to, $299, whatever you're going to charge them. We always suggest you charge $395 to make sure you don't pay any fees. But I know a lot of these deals are kind of small too. So I know that if the deal's small, oftentimes the transaction fee is not charged by EXP anyway. And us as an office won't charge it either if it's like under $1,000. So that's the thing with land. Sometimes it's really small deals unless it's a big commercial piece of land, but if it's a residential piece, a lot of times, you're talking a, $30,000 land buy, $15,000. So this special assessment section, just like in a traditional as is, I always have agents click this one. I mean, this one, the one that the seller is going to pay any assessments that they owe on the property in full prior to closing. If you ever get any blowback from this, you can always switch it to this, assuming that there's no major assessment that your buyer's scared about. You see, if left blank, it defaults to buyer anyway, which makes sense. If a seller is paying assessments in installments, they're going to pay them up to the time they own the property, and then buyer will continue paying those assessments after they own the property. I just like to click that the seller will pay the assessments in full, because most of the time nobody argues with me on that, and I'm cool with that. Got a bunch of legalese here, scrolling down to the bottom, almost there. So that's pretty much it. Once again, very similar to the regular contract, but this should kind of help you fill this out and get things going. Hope this helps.